It's part two of our conversation with the great Shem von Schroeck. I'm John Beaudin from Rocky Street Music. Toto winding it down for what could be their last tour, or at the very least a hiatus. And the guy who's been playing bass with them for the last few years, Shem von Schroeck, who's also played with Loggins and Messina, Kenny Loggins, Don Felder, and a whole bunch of other people. In this clip, we talk about Shem's favorite Toto album. Also the guy he sings with every single night, Joseph Williams, who joined Toto on their Fahrenheit album. And we talk about vocals, how to take care of your voice, and things that you don't want to do. Our conversation with Shem von Schroeck. We start with how he started in the band Toto. How long's it been now with you and Toto?
I was hired in November of 16, but the actual first tour was May of 17.
Third year? How did that happen?
I've known Steve Porcaro for a long time. I've known him since the early 90s, I'd say 91, 92. And I used to be in a band that was a Police cover band, and I did all the Sting parts and played bass, and it was a Police tribute band. And Steve Porcaro used to come see that band all the time. And that was in the back of his head, and kept in touch with him. And when they were looking for a bass player that sang and could sing the high parts, he remembered those gigs and remember what I did, and just called me and said, "Would you want to do this?" And I thought about it for about 2 seconds and went, "Absolutely."
Very impressive in concert, though, man. I'm watching you. I'm going, man, he can. I've always appreciated singing, and everyone does, because everyone's voice. A lot of times, a vocalist will their voices will lower. Of course, Elton John's a prime example. But taking care of yourself must make a difference with that too, though.
Yep, and the most important thing for a singer, opera singer, which I did for a while, sleep. Really? Sleep is everything. Sleep is the most important thing. If you can get 8 hours of sleep, you're in good shape. And it's really the most important thing. You know, don't put bad things in your body. Don't abuse your voice. Don't sing improperly. Of course, all those things. But get a good night's sleep, and it just rebuilds everything. It's like healer.
I just finished talking to Ray Williams, the guy who introduced Elton to Bernie. But he wasn't the guy who told me, our historian told me. He says Elton actually sang in a way that hurt his voice in concert. But That's not uncommon. No one was doing the technical stuff back then.
No, you learn this in classical voice. You get locked into what you think you sound like, and you try to affect your voice and try to shape it to try to sound what you think is a beautiful sound. It not necessarily is how that same beautiful sound isn't what is translating. If you just sing naturally, if you try to imitate someone, my voice teacher said, you will pay Mother Nature. She will come and get you. Yeah, don't try to affect your voice to try to. One interesting tip was, don't go up for the note, the high note. Go out for the note, like you're walking out on a tree branch. Be lighter as you go higher. Don't go up for the note, go out for the note. And when you change that tonal concept in your approach, it makes a world of difference, especially to sing those high notes.
Well, when you were doing the Sting cover band, how did you tackle? Were you very conscious of that when tackling their material, for instance? Because that's a cover thing. That's you're right. Were you trying to sound like them, or were you trying to make it Shem's Police? You know,
I was doing an effective, but for some reason in that context, that didn't hurt me.
Right.
Now, if I try to maintain and do a Steve Perry impression, which I can do, that hurts after a while. That's a little different thing from the way my chords are shaped to shape that sound, or to try to emulate that sound. I will pay Mother Nature if I keep that up.
I find this fascinating. I love this shit. I love this stuff.
But everyone's different. I mean, look at Bryan Adams and that rasp thing that he does. His voice he hasn't missed a beat. He sounds exactly the same. Yeah. At least the last few times I've heard him, it's amazing. So it's just the way you're shaped. It's just the way the chords are shaped. I can't do that. I can't do that gravel thing. I will just shred my chords if I tried to sound like that. I have more of a pure tone, and that's what I do, and I'm not going to try to be anything else.
When I reviewed Toto 14, I mentioned I've never talked to Joseph. I've tried a few times. I call it the Joseph Williams growl. I loved when he did like there's something about.
It's throaty. I call it throaty.
Yeah,
it has a throaty sound, and especially a throaty sound back when you listen to the old records, when you listen to Fahrenheit and the seventh one.
Yeah,
and when he tells the story, he says that Dave Page was just a taskmaster in the booth and would just say, nope, do it again. Nope, do it again. And Joe, being young at the time, trying to impress and wanting to say, I just want to please you, Dave, just sang his heart out in the studio, and then realized, well, this is going to be tough to pull off live, and, especially with the schedule they had and songs in the original keys and all that stuff. So So Joe and I talk all the time about vocal care, and Warren Ham is the sax player in the band. He's a great singer. So we're always talking about vocals and how to save our voices at our age now. And it's you have to be athletic with it. But the ones that survive are the intelligent singers, the ones that know how to pace yourself, how to take care of yourself. Like I said, sleep is important, all those things.
I'm not a big fan of bands changing singers, but I appreciated Fergie. I really did appreciate him.
I love Fergie.
But it wasn't my thing. You know, we're all wired different. I always say you either like Justin Bieber or you don't. You either like something or you don't. But when Joe came into the band, it was like a religious experience for me, especially on the seventh one, because that album to me is, it does sound 80s, but has stood the test of time in spite of that, because they were doing a lot of the 80s. That's one of my top 3 albums of all time.
My favorite album of Toto is Isolation, personal, but I think their best record, if I have to go outside of my opinion, I think their best record is the 7th one. Everything just came together, and Joseph's contribution just speaks for itself. Yeah. It's wonderful.
What was that first meeting like when you're sitting down and you're going to be singing with Joe? What did that feel like?
It was great. I'll make the story brief, but we met at Steve Picar's house. This was basically my formal audition, if you will. And we met at Steve Picar's studio, and I came in with just like a little cube amp, and he said, "We're just going to set up in the room." He had a keyboard set up for Dave to play, and each guy just kind of showed up one at a time. And Joe showed up first, and we just chatted a little bit, this and that, and then Dave showed up, and we talked mutual, because his dad and my dad both arrangers, and so we had that in common. Luke showed up with his guitar and goes, "Man, where do I plug in?" And we just started playing, and we played to actual Jeff's tracks. We played his original isolated drum track. So Jeff was my audition drummer.
Wow.
In spirit. Yeah. And we played through 3.5 songs, and Luke just goes, "Man, if anybody disagrees, you want the gig, it's yours, man. It sounds great." And we did a couple things where we sang just a cappella in the room to see if the blend was going to be right vocally, and Joe's like, "Sounds good to me." Dave's like, "I think we got the bass player."
Wow. That's a wonderful story.
Yeah, I walked out of the studio, got in my car, and I went, "What just happened here?" It just, and like I said, they hired me in November. We weren't doing the show till November, so it was like 6 months of waiting to actually play with the guys on stage and do the show. So it was a patience required 6 months.
More from our conversation with Shem von Schroeck in a few days. Make sure you comment on our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. I'm John Beaudin from Rocky Stream Music.